Hello, I'm making a series about noise textures in Blender. Procedural noise is an incredible tool you can use in 3D. Noise allows you to add details that ground your scene in reality. So, the first part of the series is about Voronoi. Most of you watching are familiar with Voronoi, but for those who aren't, here's what it looks like. It has a randomness slider, a scale slider, and a vector input. Voronoi also gives us 3 outputs: distance, color, and position. This is cool. Most noise patterns don't give us vector outputs. And this pattern looks pretty intricate. But the way we make Voronoi is actually pretty simple. We start out by dividing our shader with a few grid lines. We draw a point in the center of each cell. Now we'll expand these dots until they meet with another expanding dot. And if we make this a gradient where greater distances from the center equal increased values, making that change, we've created the distance output of Voronoi. But this has structure and order. Let's make the noisy part of Voronoi noise. Okay, to implement the randomness slider, we need one more step. Before we expand these dots in the center of our grid boxes, let's distort their positions using noise. This means our original points, before they expand, are shuffled around randomly, just like this. Once we expand these randomly placed dots, we get a result like this. As for the other outputs of this node, color assigns a random color for each Voronoi cell. Position colors each cell with the position of the dots they originated from. The Voronoi vector output is actually pretty useful. You can use it to make texture coordinates that are randomly scattered. You can make these coordinates by subtracting your object coordinates by your position output. That would give us this result. But we don't need the z-axis, so I multiplied the z by 0. If you're using 2D Voronoi, it will remove the z-axis for you. I'll cover the differences in these 4 settings really soon. In this image, I'm randomly placing a simple procedural design using Voronoi. I use some tricks to get a random rotation for every individual Voronoi cell. To get a full understanding of Voronoi, let's take a look at some settings in the Voronoi node. If you're making your Voronoi patterns on a flat plane, like I am, you might wonder why some cells are so much smaller than others. That's because, like most other Blender noise textures, these Voronoi cells are actually simulated in a 3D volume. That means we're really looking at a 2D cross-section of 3D noise. This explains why scrolling our noise on the z-axis in 3D space will distort the shapes of our Voronoi cells. I quickly made this abstract render to demonstrate the 3D aspect of Voronoi. This is what it would look like to be inside a Voronoi cell. But if you want your Voronoi cells to lie flat on your surface and not fly around in a 3D volume, you can switch this simple setting from 3D to 2D. Now, every cell has the same size. Another useful setting in the node itself is the Voronoi variance. You can use this middle drop-down panel to select a variant, so if you don't want your Voronoi to look perfectly round, you could use the distance to edge setting. This means we have a gradient that takes the shape of its own Voronoi cell. Now, if we use a greater than operation, they don't start out as circles. This is really useful for asphalt and all kinds of rocky terrain. Another useful setting is Smooth F1. F1 is the base version of Voronoi that we already went over. But Smooth F1 adds a smoothness slider that blends between Voronoi cells. Here's an example with the position output. With smoothness 0, it looks normal, but as I increase it, we get this blurring effect. I use Smooth F1 to create this painterly effect. Overall, Voronoi is an awesome organic pattern that appears in nature really often. Remember these nucleation points? Those points that expand to form Voronoi cells? The reason we first placed them in an evenly spaced grid is because we use noise to distort them. But if we reduce the effect of this distortion, we get a randomness slider. I want to tell you that I'm selling a photoreal material on my Blender Market page. I made a whole video about it too. The video is about edgeware, so I'll leave a link in the description to purchase my material. It's just $2. Thanks for watching. Bye.